Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we are going to cover the final two questions that I always ask our authors in the podcast. And that is, what is your favorite book? And what was the number one thing that you learned from it? And what is your favorite quote and why? So these are always fun questions. We get a great variety of answers. And it really is nice because the funny thing is that is typically the hardest question is question 4. With what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it? And I'll tell you, my answer to that changes quite often. And one of the books that has probably had the biggest impact on my life has been The Last Lecture with Randy Pouch. And for those that know his story, he died of pancreatic cancer a number of years ago. And what he did when he was diagnosed with a disease was that he wanted to have this amazing seminar that he was going to give. He was a university lecturer, and he gave this, quite literally, the speech of a lifetime. And the concept of the speech was lessons he wanted to share about what he's learned about life, things that he wanted to share with his, as part of his legacy, to share with his family, to share with his students. And he had when he gave the session, it was completely packed. Filled up an entire auditorium. They filmed it. It has had millions upon millions of views on YouTube. I highly recommend you check it out. It is called The Last Lecture. And it's really inspirational. And you're probably asking, well, how did that connect with me? Well, how I started my business was roughly around this time 8 years ago. And it started as an idea. I was close to 340 pounds, borderline type 2 diabetic, high blood pressure. I was a mess. I was badly sick. I was teaching at the time. I realized, okay, I need to go see a doctor. I went to go see that doctor, and he told me that the tests were bad. I was a mess, and if I didn't get my act together in 5 years, I'd be dead. That was a pretty powerful message. So what did I do? Well, I got my act together. I lost 60 pounds over the next 6 months, and I've kept the weight off. Now, has that been a challenge over the years? Has it gone a little up and down? Absolutely. But every time it went up, we fixed it. And one of the things I realized was I didn't want to die. And, I still have sleep apnea to this day. Sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's a bit rough. It's never fun when you wake up in the middle of the night gasping for air, but it happens. But the main thing that book taught me, and the video of his lecture, because they took all the concepts from his talk, put it into the book, repurposed it. Just a wonderful book. It's a quick read, but it really makes you think about life. And the worst thing that you want to live with is what if? What if? I don't ever want to live that way. And when I taught, I made the decision, and I went back and forth for 2 years on this, and that was to leave teaching and to go full-time into my publishing business. And I finally did it 2 years ago. And that's when I talk about the 2 mantras, right? Done is better than perfect, and don't be afraid to take the plunge. And that was the one thing I kept talking about. Don't be afraid to take the plunge. And when I sent in my retirement form, dropped it off to the main office in Fort Worth, and I just knew it was the right decision. I felt like an entire weight of the world was taken off. Because I didn't want to do what if. I didn't want to teach another 20 years and get this publishing company going. I was already in my early 40s. I don't want to ever live by the concept of what if. That's why I've gone to Maui 3 times in the last 3 years. because I don't want to live with what if. With my mom, she's going to be 82 in a couple weeks, and I don't ever want to live what if. And I was able to give her a few epic trips to Maui, and that was awesome, because those are the type of memories that you will have until the day you die and beyond. Because you should enjoy life. You shouldn't be miserable. You shouldn't be at a job that you don't want to be at. And don't get me wrong, I love teaching. It was an absolute privilege to teach my kids. But what I realized was it was something I knew that a change needed to happen. And I've always wanted to run my own business. I always wanted to get this publishing company going. And it's the best decision I ever made. We spent 17 days in Maui last month. 17 days. First class accommodations, first class flights. It was awesome. Because it was the last time I could take my mom to Maui, because with her turning 82, she can't really do any really long haul travel anymore. So we made sure it was truly an epic trip. Because I didn't want this to be what if. I don't want to be that person that just has these goals and never gets them done. And that's why I love teaching people about how to get their books done. Because there's so many people out there that have these amazing stories that they have to share with the world. And I want to help with that. Whether it's going through my business, or whether it's just me having a conversation with them and just setting them in the right direction. Doesn't matter to me. The main thing is that I can help people share their stories with the world, but most importantly, change their lives. Already seen it happen. Seen it happen with my clients. I saw it happen with a reader that reached out to me from Hong Kong, of all places. She was a nurse. She resigned her position to go to private practice. Was the best decision she ever made. And she said that was just through reading Motivation 101, a book that I give away for free on Kindle. And one thing I always talk about is having the power of one. And that is, if your book can help one person, just one person, then it's all worth it. So that is why the last lecture has had such an impact on me, because I don't ever want to live by the principle of what if. If I want to go to Maui, we're going to Maui. I want to have the freedom to be able to work from anywhere in the world, I'm going to do it. Now, did I work my tail off while I was in Maui? Absolutely. First week and a half of that trip, I was managing a book launch for a client. Probably one of the most challenging books we've ever had. Political book. It was polarizing. You want to check it out? It's called Betrayal. Amazing guy, but it was a polarizing book. And we still got that book to #1 in 7 different categories in Amazon. That's the main thing we talk about, is having that proven system that works. And it was great. And it's amazing to be able to have a job that you can work anywhere in the world as long as you have a laptop and as long as you have Wi-Fi. Really is an amazing place we live in these days. So what if, right? I don't ever want to live by that principle. And that's probably the biggest thing that the last lecture taught was, what if? Go out there and go after your dreams. Don't be afraid to take the plunge. And just remember with your book, done is better than perfect. And then for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why? This is actually from The Power of a Positive Mental Attitude, W. Clement Stone. His quote was, "What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it will achieve." Now you're probably wondering, why am I quoting a book that old and a gentleman you may have never heard of? Well, Mr. Stone was the head of a company called Combined Insurance. Why do I share that story? Because that's the company which my mom and dad worked for. They actually met through Combined Insurance. They moved over to Texas due to a huge business opportunity to run Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas back in 1980. So it was the reason that we moved to Texas. And it was a game changer. I've met Mr. Stone. My parents knew him well. Just an amazing guy who built this billion-dollar company. But the main thing was having the right mindset. And he always believed what the mind of man or woman can conceive and believe, it will achieve. And I've always lived by that principle. One of my other books is called PMA, Positive Mental Attitude, because it really does make all the difference in the world. You have to be positive. You have to realize that you can accomplish anything you set your mind to. And that's what that quote teaches. Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it will achieve. And I truly believe that. I believed it my entire life. I teach it at seminars. I've put it in the books. I've taught my clients it. You can accomplish anything that you set your mind to. I have seen that happen my entire life, and I've seen it happen to many others as well. So, that wraps up our solo series. Tomorrow, or actually I believe the episode will be going out on Monday, but that will be episode 300. And I have a very special guest. We're going to go probably a little bit off topic with that interview, but it's going to be a lot of fun because we are going to share the author journey. We're going to share the publisher journey, the marketer journey, and we're just going to have a really great time. So, as I always say, guys, thank you again for listening, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead. Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.